So anytime you're about to do some change work with people, you want to go ahead and set a frame inside their mind. So on page 64, the change work framework is basically made up of 7 key elements. The first thing you have to do when you are working with yourself or others, the most critical step is to get permission. To get what, please? If you do not have permission from the person, nothing is going to work. So anybody can change their life as long as you are given permission to do it. I believe that most of what I did when I used to do energy healing and work with people with chronic terminal illnesses and have them really just see these people heal themselves completely, all I did was give them permission. I just gave them the opportunity to give themselves permission to actually create a result. So when you start a coaching session, you want to provide an environment that allows them to give themselves permission to transform. So the first thing I do with a client is I get their permission. So whether I'm trying to elicit your results, whether I'm trying to get you aligned, whether I'm trying to set up a plan with you, whether I'm trying to get you to implement something, whether I'm trying to get you to develop yourself, no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm asking you questions, listening to you, whether I'm delivering a result, whatever it is, I make sure that I have permission as a starting point. So when I'm going to do any type of change work with you, as in we're going to change something in your life now, actually do some type of change, I want to get your permission first and foremost. The second thing that I want to do is I want to set the rules. I actually want to set the rules of how this now works. What you can say, what you can't say, how you can feel, what you're this and that, just the actual rules of the session. And there are 5 rules that I generally want to set. We're going to cover those in a moment. Once I've set the rules and I've got your permission, then I begin a process that has 2 parts to it: evaluation and explanation. Evaluation is where I evaluate the issue that you want to work on. But if you do not want to work on an issue, then I just explain whatever we're going to do next. So step 3 has 2 parts because you don't always have to evaluate a problem to work with someone. In fact, you're going to learn techniques here where you don't even have to ask them what the problem is. 0 knowledge of the problem, and you'll be able to help them transform it, no problems at all. So if I don't need to know what your problem is, I don't need to evaluate it in any way, shape or form. But if I do need to know what it is, then I do a short evaluation where I get you to score the problem out of 10, I ask you a few questions, and away we go. You don't spend hours talking about the problem. We just spend enough time to evaluate it so that you know after the change work that something has actually occurred. I like to look for actual scoring changes in my clients. So I want to score you before I do something and afterwards, because I'm scientific in my approach to things. I want to make sure it worked. And the way it worked, you're going to score it. And you'll be able to tell me if it worked. And if it didn't work, I'm not going to pretend, oh, you got it wrong. I'm going to say, well, let's try it again. Let's try something different. Remember, rescuers, if it doesn't work, they blame you. Great coaches, if it doesn't work, they take responsibility for that and try it again. But amateur coaches don't want to know if it worked or not because they don't. They just, yeah, okay, so that's the technique. All right, it's going to work. Have a good sleep. Yep, it's all good. Yep, don't talk to me if it didn't. I know it did. They hide from it. I don't. In the session, I want to know it worked. Look at me in the eye and tell me if it worked or not. If it didn't work, let's try it again. If not, let's try something different. But just be open enough to say, just be scientific. Like, it either worked or it didn't. If it didn't work, try something else. Don't take it personally. Or try it again in a different way. But just don't take this personally. You want the best result for clients. Once you've evaluated the problem, the next thing you want to do is to actually do the process itself. The process is where you actually go through the different results techniques. So the different techniques of getting results with people. And as I said, you're going to learn 7 core ones here at this program. Once you've done the process, you now have to do something called future pacing. Future pacing is used in a variety of all forms of psychology, and all the different strains of psychology, if you trace them back to all their origins, they'll all have some form of future pacing in them. Even the most ancient cultures on the planet that did dreaming and landscaping and journeying and soul retrievals and these kind of processes, they all had an element of you going into the future and experiencing the reality of what you had just achieved. So predominantly every technique you'll ever use has an element of future pacing in it. Again, we're going to explain all of these in great detail as we go through the program. The next one is an analysis. An analysis is basically where you analyze whether or not there has been a hit here, whether or not you've actually got the result. So the evaluation is to find out where they're at now. The analysis is where you analyze, was there any change that occurred just then? Any change at all? Did something shift? Did energy move? Did you get an epiphany? Did something actually occur? If the analysis says, yes, that did happen, there was some change, then all you have to do now is set up some boundaries. And that's it. So this is pretty much the framework that all change goes through. After thousands of hours of doing change work, but also working with people doing change work and observing other people's processes, you realize they pretty much all do this in some way, shape, or form. So get their permission, set the rules, evaluate, then explain. Once you've done that, do the process. Once you've done that, future pace. Once you've done that, do an analysis. Once you've done that, set some boundaries. And if you do this every time you do change work with a client, it's just going to be solid. It's very clear for the client where they're going, and everything starts to make sense. There is a little bit of an acronym that sort of you can use to remember it, and it's just P.R.E.P.F.A.B. So PrEP to be fabulous. Fabulous is not really a word that I typically use a lot, but if you want to remember it, it's P.R.E.P.F.A.B. So if you're thinking about a coaching session, PrEP, and then PrEP to be fabulous, Fab, and then you kind of got the whole idea. So P.R.E.P.F.A.B, and you can just remember it quite easily. So anytime I'm getting ready to coach someone and do some type of change work, I want to prep myself to be fabulous. And that's kind of the whole concept. And prep them to be fabulous as well.